Welcome to multiple choice question 3 of the 2006 Mathematical Methods Exam 2. In this video we will be looking at the solution for this question. A reminder that this video is in no way endorsed by VCAA. And now before we move on, I'd just like to point out that the use of a CAS calculator may assist in answering this question, and I'll actually be going through both how to do it purely by hand and how the calculator can be used to assist in answering the question. So for question 3, it says the range of this function with a domain of -2 to 7 with a rule f of x equals 5 subtract x is one of the following. So if we first do this purely by hand, what we'd want to do is find the y values when x is -2 and when x is 7. So they're the two endpoints of the domain. So starting with -2, I'm just going to do the function evaluated at -2. And that will be 5 subtract -2, which actually gives +7. And then for the next point, we're going to do f of 7, which gives 5 subtract 7, which equals -2. So the confusing thing here is that the domain has a -2 and a 7 in it, and the range is actually going to end up with a -2 and a 7 in it. But we've got to work out which one is included and which one is excluded. So to do that, I'm actually going to draw a quick graph. So next on this set of axes, I'm going to locate those two coordinates. So when x is -2, we get y is 7. So that point is going to be somewhere up here. And it will be a coloured in dot. And that's because there's a square bracket around the -2 including it. So that point's going to be -2, 7. So if we consider our next point, which is when x is 7 and y is -2, that's going to be a point somewhere down here, and that's going to be an open dot because there's a round bracket around the 7. So the coordinate there was 7, -2. And now to finish this graph off, we just need to draw a straight line that joins those 2 points. And now to come back to the question, when it asks for the range, we can see it goes from a smallest value down here of -2 not included, up here to 7, which is included. So that means that we need A as our answer because we have -2 to 7 with the 2 having a round bracket excluding it and the 7 being included with that square bracket. So now that you've seen this question done by hand, we're now going to use the CAS calculator to do the same problem. So on the calculator, go into the main menu, and the first thing that we can do to tackle this problem is to define the function. So I'm just going to type in 5 subtract x, and then highlight it and go interactive, define, and we're defining it as f of x, so we can just press OK. And then the next thing we can do is find both of the endpoints using the calculator. So I can drag down f of x and put -2 in and hit execute, and that'll give us the y value of 7, which we'd already found by hand. And we can do the same thing for the endpoint of 7, and we can hit execute, and that gives -2. So from that point there, you may take over and do that by hand yourself again. Or instead of doing that, you could have just graphed this with a restriction. So there's a few approaches you could take on the calculator, which I'm showing now. So if you were to do it with a graph and a restriction, you drag down f of x, and then we can click on the keyboard button to bring up the soft keypad. And going into Math 3, we can use this straight up and down line to get a restriction. And we're going to restrict it between -2 and 7. So as set notation, we can type in -2 after the straight line is less than or equal to x. And I'm actually going to use less than or equal to 7 here for the calculator. And that's just so in the graph screen, we can use fmin and fmax to actually find those endpoints. If that was just a less than symbol rather than a less than or equal to symbol, this approach wouldn't quite work on the calculator. So hitting the graph icon, we can drag down from the left-hand side so that we can see that restrictions included, and the calculator will draw that line segment. Now we can't see both endpoints, so I'm just going to hit the negative button on the hard keypad to zoom out, and we can now see where the line starts and stops. And going analysis gsolve fmin, we'll find the point 7, -2, and hitting execute on the keyboard will lock that in place. And then analysis gsolve fmax will find the point at -2, +7, and again hitting execute on the keyboard will lock that point there, and hitting escape will actually just clean up the graph for you. So there you can see the line segment, but what the calculator hasn't managed to do is work out which point is included and which point is excluded. which is where we can go back to the one that we just drew to see the open dot and closed dot and where they should be. So from the calculator, we can still see that it gives all the same information that we found by hand, and that leads to the correct answer of A. And from the examiner's report, we can see that 71% of students got this question correct. So it was fairly well done, but it also seemed to challenge a number of students. The students that selected B just confused whether it needed to be square or round brackets on the -2 and the 7 and got them the wrong way around.